What is up, everybody? Petetorious Interviews, episode number 4. Thank you so much for listening, for joining, all that good stuff. Please subscribe on the YouTubes, and that is enough hacky promotion. So today I have another really good Seattle comedian with me. He is a huge producer in the mix of Seattle comedy. We're going to get into the mix of a lot of that. And he's one of the few people actually I don't know too well yet. So I actually am looking forward to challenging myself and finding out more about him. So without an elongated intro, he does produce a lot of mics and definitely deserves all your respect and all your attention. Let's bring in Noah Dinodad Rubin. Dinodad, what is up?
Hey, thank you for the introduction.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I am good. I'm still getting better at those. So thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. I know we have a finite time and space, but like I was saying, this is my fourth podcast. I don't know you too well, so I do just want to kind of lay out, I guess, who you are. And I want to phrase it in a way that I guess if a female is to ask you, what's your deal? How would you answer that?
What's my deal?
No, you know what I mean? Like you ever go on a date and some girl just says like, so what's your deal? And that's where you go, okay, I'm like, this is like, I don't want to say how you identify because I don't know, it's subjective and I don't really subscribe to that as much, but like, you know what I mean though? Like, I mean, you're a comedian.
Okay.
Go from there.
Okay. If I go on a date, I'll
yes,
plan.
There we go. Yeah. Let's go there.
If I go on a date and someone says, what's my deal?
Yeah.
Honestly, I over the past 2 years, I've kind of like, I like talking about comedy, but I also noticed that at one point when I was doing the beginning, I felt like it was all I was talking about. So I kind of like try to kind of carefully like discuss it and open it up. But, what's my deal? I usually tell people like I'm a father, I'm a therapist, and I have this comedy thing, and it's kind of a hobby, kind of a job. So I call it a jobby, Yeah, I mean, and if folks ask about how it kind of just started, it was going into the water wheel when I used to run shows there, and before that they had their open mic. I went in there, and the person previous left, and then I took it over, and then I just kind of got immersed into this scene without really knowing. I mean, I like comedy a lot, but I hadn't really performed that much, and I just kind of took this thing over and started to kind of figure out how to organize. For me, what I've learned more about is what I like about it is like trying to like provide a place for people to come together. And actually recently I've been reflecting more about there's opportunities. I could make it more into a side hustle and make more money with it. But I think that I just enjoy giving like the Shanghai Room, a place for people just to produce their own shows and make their own money. And if they can like drive it and bring people there, then I feel that's where my value is bringing people together and giving people an opportunity to produce something where they may not have had an opportunity otherwise. I really see it as giving people opportunities.
Okay. So you answered the question of identify this. So that's, and a few other questions. So that's good there. Yeah. The date probably walked out by now, but
yeah. He's like, who's this guy? He's so self-absorbed.
It's like, oh my God, I just asked no. But okay, well that answers the question as far as like you're producing. So if nobody knows, you do produce a lot of shows, and I find that interesting, especially that like, it's really cool that you always have something going, and it's almost like you kind of seem like a comedian entrepreneur in a way where like, I mean, obviously, it's like, you know, you're not taking over Seattle. People joke about that. We're like, oh, Dinodad runs every mic. But it is very cool that you have these spaces, like you're saying, that you are giving people a medium to support. And honestly, a part of you has kind of been planted in me where I do look at places where I'll go out to bars and go, God, you know what, man, I want to be like you, where I have these places that I can just, you know, I go here and I go, you know what, man, this place could be a good space. Do you ever go around places and you go, this would be a great place to have a mic?
You know, I used to do more of that in the beginning, you know, and because I just felt as if, you know, you could just, I mean, if a room wanted to, you know, have more people there or just bodies in the room, I would walk around and think this could be a good place for a mic, and I would do that. And that's what I did in the beginning a bit, as I'd kind of walk around and say this could be cool. Because what happened was, as I was in Denver for a little bit, and I noticed that they have multiple mics. Like I went there on a Sunday, and you know they'd have like a mic at like 5 p.m. and then all those people would tell you where to go next. And it was just, we just kind of walked down the road after every mic, and they're all like 10, 15 minutes apart. And so you kind of built this community. It was like a cohort of people just moving along. And I liked that idea. And I felt that that was something that was missing here in the beginning. So I was kind of looking for places that were in the same neighborhood, so people could hop along and make it easy for them so they could spend a day practicing or whatever, you know, just like a comedy bar crawl or whatever.
Yeah. So you did that for a while, that like in the North Seattle area where it was one area. And I was telling Mitch where he had a mic for a while, and I was like, hey, this is Dinodad territory. And it didn't work out. So I was like, I might be right.
Well, you know, the more the merrier. I mean, I think it's, I just think the more rooms there are, more spaces, it's fun, you know, mics come and go.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, no, I like seeing more people produce mics and see when they're popping up, you know.
Oh yeah, no, obviously joke on like competition, but I was just like, this is Dinodad territory. If the open mics were gang related, you are on his territory.
It's like a mobster mentality or something.
Hey,
like that.
Yeah, on my turf, you need a cut.
Yeah.
No, definitely. So I will ask, and I, you know, so I've known you for seen you a while, known, I guess, in comedy. What's the nickname? I don't get it yet. I haven't heard any dinosaur jokes from you. I know your dad. What's Dinodad? What's that about?
I mean, you know, when I first started, I had, you know, like there was social media, and I had like my personal Instagram, and I was like, well, I don't want to use this for comedy, I just saw different people with, you know, attach their names to comedy, and my son at the time just really was interested in dinosaurs, and that's kind of where it just came from. My son liked dinosaurs, and I was like, okay, well, I'm Dinodad. I don't know. And I didn't even expect it to kind of become like a nickname or whatever. I just really didn't know. And then people started calling me that, and then I kind of went with it. And you know, it's funny when people who don't even know that my name's Noah will come up to me and they're just like, oh, I've heard of you, Dinodad. And you know, yeah. So it just started from my son enjoying dinosaurs.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of picked up legs. Do you feel like you're stuck with it? Do you feel like you're stuck with the nickname?
You know, it comes and goes, because I was also doing a character called Dinodad for a while, and kind of making that into kind of a separate persona, and working on that. And I still, you know, come back to it every now and again. And I've had ideas for that every now and again. I'm like, oh, I should make like a little short animated series with this Dinodad character. He's this, you know, old curmudgeon-y Jewish guy that only tells one-liner jokes, and he's got a lot of history, but nobody's given him credit for his success, and he takes credit for a lot of other people's successes, but still nobody knows who he is. And so there's that there. I still sometimes do it, but you know, but kind of I'll show up at mics now or wherever, and I'll just put my name Noah on the list, or I'll put Noah Dinodad, kind of differentiate the two a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, because I think when I first I think we had each other, me or you, And I did see where you came out onto a mic. I think you were like in LA or you're traveling or something like that. And I was like, what's this about? Because
Yeah.
I mean, as a first impression, I think you really went, ah, and I was like, if this guy pretends to be a dinosaur, like, I don't know how I'm gonna talk to this guy.
That's who I was. No, yeah, I was in LA, and I was just going to mics, and I was still kind of figuring out. I mean, I still am figuring out kind of like my comedic voice.
Yeah.
And I was just walking to a mic one day. I think it was somewhere in Santa Monica. I was just walking there, and I said, it might be fun to just like play with this and make this into kind of an over the top character, kind of based a little bit on like Rodney Dangerfield or something like that. And
Dinosaur Rodney.
yeah, like he's like, oh, it was almost like no respect kind of thing, or I'm
Okay.
done with that. Hey, I tell jokes, that
Okay.
kind of thing. But yeah, that it went there, and then you hear feedback from people, and some people are like, oh, don't do a character, don't do this, and I was just so focused on just trying to make it work, even if people didn't like it. I actually auditioned at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, and you get 2 minutes. And I went in there, and
2
actually,
minutes.
I showed up beforehand, just like in character as this weirdo, and I went in there, and I went on, and some old man went before me, and I guess he wasn't like that funny, but he was trying to tell like old man kind of jokes, and then I went up after, and they bring you back, and I mean, I passed at Flappers.
Nice.
I was leaving LA, so I didn't get to perform. I just thought, heck, I'll just see what happens.
Yeah, just to do it.
So I don't know. It worked to get into Flappers. I don't know.
Yeah. So you went up there 2 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't do like I didn't act like a dinosaur. I acted like an old like curmudgeon-y man. I mean,
Okay, so you kept the good little grit.
I don't really.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because that's impressive, honestly. If you can be like, hey, I had like a dinosaur and I got past here, I'd be like, all right, you can do some shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so how long have you been doing comedy actually?
I mean, stand up officially, I guess, has been 2 years.
Okay.
I've done I kind of was like a theater kid and did.
Okay.
And then I lived in Korea for a bit, and I was like on an improv troupe there when I lived in Korea. So, and I studied improv for a little bit when I lived in Chicago. So I kind of always had kind of the funny bug of sorts. Just kind of, it was always something I was interested in. I didn't know that it was going to turn into kind of where it's going or where it is right now at all. Had no idea about any of this.
So while you were doing that, did that idea itch you a lot? Like, did you go, God, like that's the next step, but I don't want to take it? Or did you think that was just not in your realm of possibility?
I think I was just nervous about it, like putting myself out there and sharing ideas or sharing things that, and trying to, I've always kind of tried to, I'm not like a super offensive comedian. I try to find edgy things to talk about, but I was really concerned about kind of like, what if my idea, like, this thing in my head, nobody likes, or it upsets a lot of people. What am I going to do with that? And, fortunately, at a lot of mics, or at least the ones that I'm running, like I feel it's kind of like a relatively safe space to share and say things, and I try to do that there. But those are things that I was worried about. Is like, what if I talk too much about my personal life or whatever? What's going to happen? That kind of thing.
Little do you know that that's what everybody talks about.
Yeah,
everyone kind of shares their personal life, and to some degree, that's kind of what gets people interested in you. So it's like I feel like for a lot of time when someone just comes up with like a political joke on stage, you're kind of like, dude, are you gonna say hi? You know what I mean? Like, do you ever feel that? Like, where you see a comic, and you're like, that's probably not a bad joke, but like, I don't like you yet.
Yeah. No, I've messaged back and forth kind of when I get into my funks about comedy, and I've had some people write me and they just said, like, attach an emotion, make it relatable, and then just keep focusing on tags or punchlines after the next,
Mhm.
and yeah, I try to find like things that usually, and I've been, just watching too, kind of sitting back and watching, I kind of see where where audiences respond. And actually recently I've just noticed like things that people just automatically cheer to are like, anybody here a weed smoker? That always gets cheers. So,
Yeah.
I start off a joke like, I had sex, and everybody cheers, and then I say 6 months ago, and it's
Yeah.
like they
Boo.
like
Yeah.
talking about sex, but then I'll be like, I got here safely in my car today. Nobody cheers that. Nobody cares,
Yeah. That's
So
poignant. So
yeah.
so when you were talking about, I guess, the improv itch, or I mean the nervousness of it and being afraid of that, like, I guess I was gonna say kind of tongue in cheek, but the time is already gone. But like, were you thinking about that in Seattle or in South Korea? Like, were you thinking, God, I might offend people? Did you think about ever doing it in South Korea?
I didn't think. I mean, improv is just different. You know, I think improv is just more playful. Um, and improv, oftentimes when you're performing, it feels as if the audience is prepared to be on your side and encourage you. And stand up, particularly at open mics, you have to like win people over, which
Right.
is harder. It's like, how do I get these people, or are they enjoying this? Are they laughing? Or are they just listening intently? I can't tell. I try to like figure out what's going on in the room. Um, um, and so yeah, there's but I had thought for years that I wanted to do stand up. I just didn't really understand how you got into it, and I didn't realize it until I started doing mics. I was just through open mics. That's how you kind of get into a stand up comedy scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, same. Yeah. Was there a scene though in South Korea? Did you
not a
see like there was an opportunity?
stand up. There might be now. Like, it was such a long time ago because I was there in like 2006, and we were just a very small little improv troupe. And now I see that they've grown into like this big organization there. Um,
Hmm.
but I, you know, I don't know. They're in Korea. They are very much into like gags and sketch comedy. Korean folks,
Hmm.
they have like a lot of gag and prank shows. Um, I don't know. I mean, they must be more interested in stand up comedy now, but I wasn't really paying attention to it too closely. I think when we were just doing improv, we were just going around to different bars, and it was mostly for foreigners. Uh, um, to have something to do on a Friday or Saturday night.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I went to Japan. I was gonna say Asia,
Cool.
Vegas. Fuck. I went to Japan, and God, when you watch the news, you're so right on the skit part because, dude, it goes from like, here's the weather to all of a sudden there is like they're trying to put cockroaches in like a hot girl skirt and like just the weirdest sort of thing. And it's like you almost think you get where they're going
Yeah.
just by nonverbal cues,
Uh
but
huh.
then you're just so wrong. And that's
Yeah.
what's, I think, the most fun thing about that. And I don't know if you have any insight on that, like why they love. It's like why. Here's the thing: is what I notice is like they're so clean cut, middle of the line, and then they have the shows seem to be that sort of. It's like their only output of debauchery in a way. Like it's their only way of release. It seems like maybe you noticed that while you were there.
I don't. I'm sure there are a lot of similarities culturally between Korea and Japan, but my first year in Korea, um, because I was there basically for 2 years, I really just tried to kind of get to know Korean people, and I would, mostly just through the bar and hanging out, and and like they like to like tease and give each other a hard time, and are very brutally honest. I
Mm.
remember, you know, I was out with one of my Korean friends, and then like this, other woman that was their friend came in, and they just like, I couldn't understand why they were laughing at her. And then he whispers to me, like, we're calling her Gollum. They were very like, they're very, and then she was laughing along too. They're very like straightforward. And the kids from an early age like to prank each other too, and and pick on each other. And it just seems that's kind of what I noticed. Not necessarily mean, but I just noticed there was a lot of like prankster kind of stuff that happened there. But like you would say, it wasn't really expected based upon kind of just seeing it from the outside.
Okay. Well, yeah. I figured they have a sense of humor, I guess, in which way it's outputted. Yeah. No, it's interesting to go somewhere different, see their type of humor, and you spend enough time there, you're probably like, no, stand up doesn't really matter here. Not really an outlet.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder now how it is out there. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll go back and check it out. I don't know.
I think now with comedy, it's reached everywhere. Like everybody is well aware of Joe Rogan, Shane Gillis, like all these big people. It's kind of blown up, and I like asking people too about what they think about like the state of comedy is. To me, it almost seems maybe not, but kind of in a way, it seems like it's getting saturated. Like there's just a lot of people posting clips, being where we are right now, trying to go viral. When it's like when I was telling Brandon White, who was my second guest, where it's like we're in school right now. We're in school and we're trying to get our degree in comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like people are trying to use like just the most baby half premises to try to get viral. And I just don't think that's like a good long game. For people trying to be a comic, it's just weird that when people are just overly posting on social media, and it's whatever, it's like, it's whatever you're trying to cling to. But when you look at comedy as a whole, you just see so many people trying to do the same thing that people in 20-year comics are doing.
Yeah, that's why it's good to talk to kind of veteran comics and kind of what they think and how their understanding of it is. I was in Portland this past weekend, and I met this comedian who's been doing it for a while, and he's I don't know if I should say his name. His name's Jeff Richards. He's a really nice guy, and he doesn't go to open mics anymore, and I think he's met lots of people who are well known and so forth. But he said that the test of like your comedy is like when you get your peers to enjoy it, because over time, like that's kind of the difference between like a really talented comedian and somebody who's just kind of getting hits or whatever, or finding the algorithm online.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like that's part of it too, is kind of evolving and growing and reflecting. And I only say this as somebody in it for 2 years, but I try to think a lot about kind of where I started and how I understood it, and kind of the growth and maturity. Kind of like you say, we're in school, you get to that, whatever. A senior year could be 15 years away, but it's just really, I think you got to be reflective. And for me, it's just kind of, continuing to build relationships and just, I don't know, just think a lot.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, no, it's a great time for comedy. I guess, I was just thinking that there's just, it's weird how it's grown, and how at the same time it's being policed. Do you feel that at all? Do you feel like there's a lot of policing happening?
I think when you travel to other places, you kind of get to see what kind of I kind of see what our scene is like, and I tried to, when I was in Portland, I kind of tried to pay attention to kind of what was different there, and they definitely have their community there, and I do feel, there's certain places that police it, and uh, but it's hard because it's hard to know like how with people. I don't know. I think I just saw something online where somebody was like posting about like not saying the word bitch or whatever, and it's
Yeah.
like I don't like how you can't control what people say or do, you know.
Yeah.
But it's also hard because we have to learn somehow as well, and it's just I don't know. I guess it is being policed to some degree, and it's kind of frustrating and hard to even talk about too. I mean, it's like because I know people talk about and we pay attention to like who's doing what or who's allowed where, and I just try to say just focus on telling your jokes and just keep doing it. Don't pay too much attention to like that kind of stuff. So it's I guess yeah, it is feeling a little bit like that, but I try not to let that affect what I'm doing too much.
Yeah. No, it's it's something I think I'm kind of gearing to like ask a lot of the Seattle comics as I do this, because I've done comedy in New York, here in California,
Mm,
vaguely, none of the LA. God bless. I hope one day I can. But it seems like with here, it's like Seattle and Tacoma are like boroughs of New York,
mm,
where they're totally like, I'll think of a joke and I'll go, how does that work in Seattle? Hmm.
yeah,
How does it do in Tacoma? Hmm.
yeah.
It's like there's two different formulas to like it's just, well, because I mean, it's known we're kind of like Seattle's the kind of woke area. And I mean, for everybody who's there, who's a Seattle comic, and I consider myself a Seattle comic, it's totally fine. But like you're saying, there are things that are sort of being hindered when you're there. Whereas I think it should be the Patrice O'Neill state of mind. Funny is funny, and what's not is not. If you do a
Yeah,
cancer joke, it better be fucking funny.
yeah,
If it's not funny, well, then you're not funny and an asshole. It's like you. I think everything should be kind of open. You just need to have your point.
hmm
I
yeah,
don't know. It's just and then I'd say for like North Seattle, where you guys are at, it's like, I mean, that's like I like where North Seattle's at, because it is like no rules comedy. It's like you'll hear the most abstract, crazy shit, and I'm just like, damn, like just hearing some of like the funny comics that are over there. I'm just like, wow, I want to hear them do that in like just like a woke mic and see what happens. But
woke
it's interesting.
a woke mic. That sounds like a I don't know a name for I don't know. I'm just thinking about somebody starting a mic called the woke mic.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say anything, but it's not like any place is a particular just like cancel culture haven.
Mhm.
It's just more that on any night there's all it takes is one person to go, ugh, what, after like a joke you say, and all of a sudden the whole room goes, uh-oh.
Yeah. It's
You ever feel that?
oh yeah. I mean, I work on some jokes and yeah that you know I mean I try to I mean like I've been trying to like not the Holocaust is not funny, but I try to talk about it, and
Yeah.
it's like that's where like these like I try to add in like dark, edgy, kind of like weirdish kind of dad joke style stuff, and then it always gets kind of silent, and then I feel like are like they mad at me because like I'm talking about this, and then I'll ask like, did you like I'm Jewish, like
Right.
aren't I allowed to like talk about this? Like, but you're not allowed to like make jokes about it. And I said, but
Yeah.
that's like why Jews are funny is because we've our people have experienced so much like pain in the past, and
Yeah.
that's so it is interesting when you kind of get that response and how to work with it. Um, I mean, and then figuring out where those jokes will work and they won't. I mean, I haven't spent as much time on the South Side, but I hear, people say that they feel like they can get away with saying things that they can't say up north.
Mm-hmm.
Well, which I want to take my trip down to Tacoma to test some stuff out down there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's with your Holocaust, because I've heard like a few of the jokes when you mention Holocaust, and I think it's just like a tension thing. It's just a tension like where that's just a little puckering. You go, "Ooh," like someone, like for me, like again, I always, like cancer again is just like, it's one of those things you just say that word, and it's just like, okay. Like, like somebody, actually one of my coworkers who doesn't even do comedy said it really well. It's like, there's some jokes that like, it's like, you think of like a body of water, and some things are kind of just like, really easygoing, whatever, eating ass, dating app, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like a pond, you can just go under, and there's usually, you touch the ground pretty quickly, and it's pretty easy to find something there. But then there's things like cancer, rape, some of those really, really triggering words where that's like the ocean. You have a long way to go, and it's pretty hard to find a gem. But if you do, the payoff is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Somebody with a good Holocaust joke, a good cancer joke, they're out there, and it's not being like, hey guys, the Holocaust, am I right? It's being like having that word in there and being able to curve it into a story where it's like, one thing I was thinking about, where it's like, how could you make, it's not like how can you make the Holocaust funny, but how can you even mention the Holocaust and make it funny? Was like that girl who was taking like thirst trap selfies at the Holocaust museum, and it's like, there's a way to curve that to go, hey, I mentioned the Holocaust, but what's this bitch doing?
Yeah. Taking selfies in front of the shoe exhibit.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I mean, that right there is just like something where it kind of writes itself.
Yeah.
But it's something where you go like, what? Like that's funny, ironic.
Yeah.
Where somebody is even thinking to do that. Like,
yeah. And I think about it because you only have like 5 minutes, and you're like, okay, well, I want to work on this one thing. But that's what happens is like I'll say this thing, and I'm like, well, what if like there was a way to like form a narrative and then get this in there somewhere, because I've tried doing stories, and sometimes I just tell a full set of one-liners, and I think that like with stories, you're having like the audience go on a journey with you, and they're trying to like figure out where they're going. And if you're using these tension words, they're waiting for you to like say the thing that like
just the boom
turning point. Where's the turning point in this? What's really going to be funny, or trying to because I know in my head like why I think it's funny, or my perspective or whatever, and I'm like, how do they get to like know like how I'm experiencing the humor about this, and is my experience of my humor like can it translate to maybe 4 people
yeah
at least.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, maybe just having a preface of just being like, some sort of tension easer where it's not a story, but you kind of go, hey, lay out 15 seconds of just being like, whatever, I'm Jewish. Here's why. And then boom, what's up? I don't know. Yeah. But, actually one thing I did want to talk about, one thing I did write down. I wrote down very few questions, and I hope I'm able to coast along enough that I don't need to go to them. But one thing I did want to mention that someone was talking about and saying that's been going good for you is the mushroom shows.
Oh yes,
the mushroom shows. This guy over here starting his own little. What do you call it? It's like, I mean, it's obviously people performing on mushrooms.
It's called the Shroom Room.
Shroom Room. There you go. How was and you did your first one recently?
I did my first one in April at the Shanghai Room.
Okay.
And then I did my second one like in July in Portland at this cool theater called the Curious Comedy Theater in their annex, which was a cool area. And then I just did one this past weekend there again, and all 3 of them have sold out. Nice. I haven't brought it back to Seattle yet. I've been kind of figuring out what I want to do with it here. it's been really fun doing it in Portland. Um, um, and part of it I feel like is because I'm kind of removed from the scene a little bit, and I have a friend there named Sam Bass who's been helping me produce it in Portland, and he kind of helps me scope out different comedians, and then I kind of look at their stuff and I figure, okay, cool, let's see if these folks are interested. And it's been really good, and because it sells out, it started making me think, okay, I have to like find like really, I want to find pretty seasoned comedians for this show that are willing to do this, you know. So that's kind of a part of it is figuring out that, but it's been doing well there. I mean, and also the theater is really nice in Portland that I've been working with, which makes it something that I've been thinking about here is, the Shanghai Room's great and I could do it there again, but I've also thought where would be another cool theater to bring this at that's kind of intimate. I think that was part of it too. It's kind of an intimate theater, so the audience it felt like they were kind of along for the trip. So
like they're high as well. Yeah.
Sometimes, like in Portland, the audience didn't seem as high. I think maybe one or two people were. The Seattle show I did, there were a lot of people bringing shrooms to the show. Like it was like half the audience was tripping and half the audience was not even paying attention.
Huh. So, yeah. So how? Well, I mean, was a pandemonium? Was there dynamic? Was it smooth sailing, or how'd that go?
It was cool. It was cool because I mean, the thing about the Shanghai Room is like half the, there's a bar in the center which kind of splits up the area. So there were people on one side focused on the stage, and then we had a camera hooked up to they have like a movie theater screen in the Shanghai Room, so we were streaming what the comedians were doing on the other side. But there was like over 100 people in this room, and if you were on one side you could hear it okay, but then I would walk around on the other side, and mostly there were just people having conversations, and it was still a fun show, but it didn't feel like everybody was focused on what was happening on stage there. And that's the hard part of the room, is because the stage is on one side. So it's just figuring out kind of that. But yeah, the show's been going well, and I mean, I think the theme just lends itself to people gaining interest in that. And as I think mushrooms over the years probably will become legalized, it will, I think it's just the right time for this kind of show.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's destigmatized. Or did you take shrooms too?
Have I taken shrooms? Not for the show. Okay. Not for the show. No, when
someone's got to run it, right? Yeah.
Well, I run it, and I stay organized. I don't. I have to like stay. I like to pay attention to make sure I'm being a good organized host there. Everybody else is, and it's fun watching the comedians kind of as they start, and then they become a little more trippy. Or whatever they're going through on stage. It's fun to watch.
Dude, I can never do that. Like I was thinking about it. I was like, almost want to put my name in the hat. I'm like, dude, that is scary. I don't, that's too weird. I don't think I could even have I couldn't do a bullet point. I don't think there's any way I could do any sort of like, yeah, let me just do I'd be like one bullet point, and then like, go with the wind, man. It'd be weird.
And I think that's why I was kind of selecting comedians that I see that have very solid material, and or kind of have this personality that I could see doing well, which is why I was like, oh, Levi Manis will be good for this.
Dude, that is, I mean, that's the way to do a mushroom set, is he's just one-liner. He's a king of one-liners, so it's like not really going to forget it. I mean, it's just like set a punch, so it's perfect. I have like stories, so I would be like, there's not a chance I could follow any of the stories or get through it.
The interesting thing with him, though, is that he had like 25 minutes or so to do his set, and he was doing all his one-liners, and then all of a sudden he kind of, and I was like, I don't know if this is the mushrooms or what's going on, but he kind of stopped and kind of went on this tangent of a story. And I've seen that happen in almost every show where somebody's trying to tell their jokes, and all of a sudden they have this big experience of this is happening right now.
Oh man.
And in the audience is kind of like, what's going, but one of the comedians too, her name's Tori Ward. She did the second Shroom Room, and she's really, really talented comic. And she, at one point, she had to tell the audience to close their eyes, and then she kind of shouted out, she's like, I'm being serious, you need to close your eyes. And then she took a breath, and it was I thought if there was like an Academy Award for like performance, she would have won it, because it was just so, it was all happening right there. It was kind of like the experience that I was kind of hoping to happen. I mean, obviously I don't want her to freak out or anything, but it was kind of neat to see that kind of thing happen.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I can almost feel what's happening, because I think when you have a script, all of a sudden you break the script and you realize I'm one person and there's 100 of you like me looking at me, and it sounds like that's what happens each time.
Yeah.
And that's another reason I'd be fearful of shit. But I think it's like a fight where I need to eventually be one. So I would love to do it sometime, just to check it off the bucket list. Do shrooms on stage.
Well,
do you have one coming up?
Practice. You can always like practice.
I have actually, yeah. I Flight Path, somebody gave me a mushroom, just like little mushroom, little stem, and I did it. And as I was doing it, I was halfway through my little 5 minutes, whatever, and then I look up, like I was kind of looking down as I'm doing my joke, where I think I finished, and then look down, segue as I always do in my shy way, and I look up and I saw like like water drip ripple effect I saw in the audience. I was like, oh, and actually got really funny. Like I didn't even tell people it was mushrooms. I just somehow my joke, I just ended it and I went, oh,
yeah,
you guys are people now. And so I had a little taste of that, but it was like honestly a microdose way.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I know some people who will just microdose, and they sometimes feel like it just kind of makes them feel a little more elated or bright, or the world seems a little brighter, or they feel a little more focused on things, and without kind of completely, shrooming out or whatever.
Yeah. I'm 0 for 17 on that.
Yeah.
I've tried the microdose. I mean, apparently you just have to really measure them and put them in the capsules, but I just thought I could just like take a bite and be good.
Yeah.
But apparently the walls melt every time. Like I was like, oh, I just said, guys, like I take a bite of it. Like, no, you're supposed to chop it up, grind it, put it in a capsule, and like a 0.1. I was like, oh,
yeah,
I messed up. Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah.
That's cool though. Do you have any of those coming up?
I haven't planned the next one yet. I'm thinking about it. It's kind of just putting it together and thinking about, doing another one in Portland or doing another one around here. I was, thinking of reaching out to some of, like, maybe even seeing if I could bring it down to Tacoma. I know that
you should.
I know people, or I asked somebody and they said, yeah, people can rent out like Tacoma Comedy Club. And I was like, oh, the new one on Proctor's smaller. That could be a cool.
Prime.
So I was thinking about reaching out to them and asking.
That one would be very good. That one would be very good. Have you been there yet?
I have not been there. I know they have their mic on Mondays and
Monday, Thursday.
So the one of these Mondays that I have free, I'd like to make it down there and just see what it's all about. I hear it's very nice.
Right. Yeah, you should. Yeah. Very intimate. And honestly, it's like the laughs echo, like when they kind of echo back, because it's so small. Like when you get a laugh, you're like, whoa, I guess, as opposed to the downtown, which is obviously dope as fuck and a great place to go to, tighten up jokes. But yeah, no, it's good because they now have best of both worlds. They have like a big audience, and then they have that intimate small room.
Right. So. That feels good for the comedians too. Is that when you have a room where you the laughter doesn't kind of trickle out, or there's just two people in a giant room.
Yes, it's great for my cold, damaged heart when I'm not doing good. I like that. Yeah. So I want to go back to something you had said before. It just kind of was lingering on my mind. And I think it was maybe one of the first things you said about comedy is that you've kind of been doing it as a hobby.
Yeah.
Do you still feel it's like a hobby to you, or do you want to, what's your goal in comedy?
So I do think about this a lot, and I think the more I do it, and what keeps me liking it is like building good connections and good relationships. When I started thinking more about the money, which I knew would happen, is it started not feeling as good. And particularly when I was thinking about people like interested in doing shows at the Shanghai Room, and I was like, well, I could totally just use this and have people pay me to use the room. The rooms, they've been very supportive of like whatever I want to do there, and then it started losing its fun, and I don't like thinking about the money. I mean, money's great, and I when money's good to have, you need it, but
Yeah. Did you
but
feel like you were turning into a booker more than a comedian?
I mean, I don't. I mean, I feel this is how I feel about me as a comedian is that I produce more than I perform,
Mhm.
and I at work, you sometimes have a boss, and the boss doesn't know exactly how to do the job that you do, and so I feel as if like, I kind of like run this stuff. And I said, but I better continue to like do comedy just so I know what the experience is like, whether I get gigs or not. I just want to at least kind of understand it from that level so I can, understand what the comedians are experiencing too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I what I see for the future is, I've already met so many people, and um, I think I look at it as the more that I provide a space for other people, some of you folks are going to be really successful. Some of you might end up being celebrities in movies. And I think, well, you know, I like thinking that I knew this person or whatever. We all look out for each other. Maybe there's somebody down the line will be like, hey, we need like a Jewish guy who's 150 pounds to be in this show or whatever. I mean, I think of it like that. Like as long as you build good connections and relationships and you try your best to be a decent human being in this field, like I think that's kind of the long game here. Is that it's not about just getting big right now. It's about kind of putting in the effort and letting your work speak for itself.
Okay.
Mm.
So I mean, it sounds like acting is a step in the right direction for you. Is
Maybe
that
I
what it
don't
sounds like?
I was in there's some movie that was filmed at the Water Wheel, and I had me be a cameo. They filmed an open mic comedy scene, so they asked me to be like a comedian in it, and I
Hey, can you act like a comedian? I was like, yeah, I think so.
they actually had a lot of lines for me written out to say, and they're like, you can just kind of do your own thing. So I just told my jokes, and they said, just act like you're a new comedian. Yeah.
You should have done that. You should have you totally Dinodad. We're sure this is Dinodad plug. Yeah.
An Andy Kaufman thing and just acted really strange.
Yeah. Ruined this scene.
I don't know. I just think that comedy is like an entry level job of sorts that you can go in a lot of different directions, podcasting or some other creative form, and you just never know who you're gonna meet or who's gonna say, hey, we want you for this. I went when I was in LA. I got in touch with somebody who knew somebody, and then I got invited to hang out at the Comedy Store, and I got to go backstage, and it was cool, and
Nostalgic.
and then got to meet like people that I've seen in movies and stuff, which was crazy. I was like, oh, cool, like and shake a few of their hands, which but I think that's what I've kind of learned about stand-up comedians versus maybe other fields is that stand-up comedians kind of know the ones that are doing really well and kind of can know what it's like to start out. So I think that they will look out for each other, and I'd love to be at that point where I can like say, hey, look, I want to help other people out. I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound like you want the center stage like most comedians do. It sounds like you want to. It almost sounds like you want to have your own club.
I don't know. I thought about that. I don't know
because
what I'm.
because you're sounds like you want to give opportunities more than get opportunities, which is great. I mean, that's like, I mean, you sound very like you're, it's a very altruistic goal. I mean, that's very cool. But I
Yeah.
mean, but as looking, I mean, listening to what you're saying, none of it is going, I want the spotlight.
No, I mean, I mean, I don't know what that would be like to, like, I mean, if I ever got to that point and someone's like, hey, we want Noah to tell 45 minutes of one-liners
Yeah.
or something. I mean, I might do it, but I also think that, like, yeah, I just, partially growing up, I remember, like, uh, you know, my parents would kind of ask me kind of what I wanted to do. And as I got older, I just said, I just want to do something meaningful. I didn't know what it was. I became a therapist and I work with kids and stuff. And, and part of this was that I started thinking, oh, like, I really like comedy. I like having fun. I like being around people. I like giving people opportunities. And that is kind of what makes me feel good, is seeing, like something grow. I think the one thing I struggle with, and some comedians say this, like, there's something about, that, like, gets in the way. And I think it is a confidence issue. Like,
Hmm.
I feel confident, but I don't want to, like, own it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be this person who's, like, super proud of himself and flaunts it to the world. I see people do that and they seem successful. I just
Yeah.
don't feel comfortable being that way. So it often just feels good to see other people who get to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing you've said the most, is that you're going, man, I want to have give people opportunities
Yeah,
more than
that's
yourself.
yeah. And I know that, like, the strength of mine, and maybe it's because I've worked in the field I work in, in case management and all that stuff. I felt like that helped a lot, just organizationally. I mean, I don't feel like an organized person, but I've looked back and, like, wow, I'm pretty decent at organizing things. So it's not something I don't love organizing, but I do love the end result that sometimes happens here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just realized I'm doing therapy to the therapist, and I feel like that's a achievement for me. I just got here. I'm breaking you down. I'm like, tell me how you feel. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just listening and
Dude,
validating. That's a big part of it. Yeah.
huge part of it.
Yeah.
No, that's good, man. That's good. Well, no, dude, this has been really cool. I noticed it's about to be 2. I don't know
I
how much
have
you are
like
on time.
10 more minutes, then I have to head to work, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so about that, like, I mean, as far as like, so you do you you do therapy for children mostly, or?
Yeah. I mean, well, I I technically have mostly just worked in basically crisis management for a long time,
Hmm.
where and I do mental health evaluations for mostly minors, sometimes adults, in an emergency department, and I do that, and I see lots of kids going through some tough stuff and families going through some tough stuff. So it's quite different from comedy, but
Yeah,
it
yeah,
but I think that's kind of part of it, is that you do this so much. You listen to a lot of, like, heavy stuff, and you start thinking about, okay, like, how do we focus on, like, the positive? How is there something that's enjoyable about this? I mean, I'm not thinking that when I'm with people. I know they're going through their stuff, but
hmm,
just even going through my own stuff, I'm thinking, okay, how can I try to laugh at this situation? Why doesn't have to be so heavy? but
yeah,
but yeah, no, I work with kids, and it's not necessarily therapy. It's crisis management, which it's I enjoy it in some ways, because I can be very direct with people and tell them what I think they need in the moment to kind of stabilize.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you also have a good opportunity of doing is the goal you've had that you've been saying is what shapes a lot of people into going into entertainment and doing this like as a passion
Mm,
is a lot of the time having these sort of situations that are not ideal, bad parents, bad upbringing, and you can be that person to say, "Hey, look, the cookie cutter road probably isn't going to work for you. You're probably not going to have a 9 to 5, but there is this outlet called comedy that when you can't afford therapy, it's free, and
mhm,
you can say it to an audience whether they like it or not.
mhm.
And I mean, you can. I mean, I think that's kind of maybe the wholesome part of your job is maybe being able to see some of those bad situations and say, hey, this comedian came from that. He's a big star.
Yeah,
They
and
can do that.
that is the thing. I do. When I hear kids come in that are like talking about, I always ask them, what are your hobbies, what are your interests, and I usually ask a kid, like, if you, like, in a world where you get to like pick your dream end result of what you could be, like, what is it? And sometimes some people say like something acting or whatever, and I tell them, like, you focus on that, and if you focus on it and you set the boundaries around the toxicity in your life, you will start to feel better, and you'll start to connect with people who appreciate what you're doing, and they will support you in that. And I said, so you might not end up being like an actor in a big movie, but you might end up being in charge of something else, or responsible for something else that is still related. And so I think like that's those are the kind of the grounding things that I try to do, which I've learned from this. It helps kind of with me, providing something hopefully therapeutic to like kids or adults as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's dope, man. This has been really cool. It's been good to get to know you, and I think you live a really good life, man. You're giving people opportunities on and off the stage, and I think that's really cool, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate having the chance to just talk and get to know you a little bit too. So
Yeah.
cool. This is
Hell
awesome.
yeah, man. This has been great. I've given you just enough time to get to work and not get fired.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
has been a good interview, man.
Well,
Anything you want to plug, anything you want to shout to the world, any advice, whatever?
sure. I'm actually excited because next I did get booked for a gig at this place called the Central Saloon next Monday, and I didn't realize this. I put a little promo up with the song intro "Lithium" by Nirvana, and I didn't realize this, but someone told me that actually Nirvana. This is the first place that Nirvana performed at. Which I was a big fan of the '90s and grunge and all that stuff, so I'm
Yeah.
excited. I get to perform. I get to do 15 minutes there next Monday night. So I'm excited about that.
That's in Seattle.
Yeah, it's in Pioneer Square. It's a really
Okay.
old. I think Jimi Hendrix may have even performed. It's got a lot of history to it, so it's kind of exciting for me.
There we
Um,
go.
yeah, I don't know. I just just keep showing up to the Shanghai Room. Reach
Yeah.
out to our host Scott, Nick, and Robbie's for a little bit, and I think Toria is another person. She's going to take over running the mic on Sundays. But I always tell people, reach out to us. If you're looking for features or whatever, or even to meet if you want to book your own show. I'm open to kind of figuring out dates that work for people. I want to continue to provide this room to bring in different shows that people want to produce.
Yeah. Well, you're doing
Yeah.
a good job of it, man, and you're doing a lot for Seattle comedy. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Pete. Appreciate it.
Of course, man. Well, this has been great. And for all the viewers, hopefully you enjoyed this. If you do, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channels, and we'll see you around. More guests to come. Have a good day.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.